Happy Halloween! Look, it's got a little enough of that. I'll put that there. So hopefully I've done this right, and this will be uploading on Halloween day. Although, like, depending on the time zone, that might be a little bit early for you. But yeah, happy Halloween! Hooray! I'm filming it obviously a little bit earlier than Halloween, but you know, this is my BookTube Halloween version thing. Cheers! So as we celebrate the ancient festival of Samhain, I thought I would honor its Celtic roots by doing a video I tried to do ages ago, but accidentally deleted, which is my top 3 Irish books, because earlier I did a top 3 Latin American books, and like that's the other half of my genetic makeup, so it just seems like appropriate to do one. And the reason as well, there's a double reason, not only because of the Irishness of Halloween, but also because all the books are spooky, or you know, like kind of on a spectrum of spookiness. It's kind of from gloomy to scary, let's say. But yeah, that's just coincidence. And like there's so much Irish literature right now that's become famous, like in the last 20 years, and I don't know any of it. I haven't read Normal People, I'm sorry. I haven't read so much, and I really want to, and I'm definitely going to, but it just so happens that all the stuff I've read is like hundreds of years old. So that's what I'm going to be talking about. Also, these 3, I have to like qualify this, I don't think these are necessarily the best things that Irish literature has to offer, just the 3 books that made the strongest impact on me, personally. So, without further ado, let's get into the list. First of all, and you know I'm a real normie here, but we have Dracula. Now, like, this novel is an epistolary novel, and I'd never read an epistolary novel which went so epistolary. So like, for those who don't know, that's like letters, right? It's written in the form of letters, and this was a big thing with Gothic literature, and this one was like not just letters, but like, you know, like it's like found items, like the found footage of literature, you know, as a subgenre of horror. So in Gothic books, they're often like, you know, we found this diary in this castle and now we read it and it's like true and whatever. So yeah, Dracula is really like that. It's got like, you know, diary entries, it's got letters, it's got like recorded monographs that have been like transcribed, and like just like all sorts of different types of documentation like put together. So like what I think is really great, like we all know the characters of Dracula, but the thing that I loved about the novel was the form, like the way that it felt like as you were reading the novel, you were just rifling through these documents that are all connected because of this one mysterious evil person. And that was just so interesting to see how the characters start to come together and how the narrative starts to form out of the different documents. Like, you really feel like a detective, I feel, putting it together. And then there's that one bit in the novel where, what's his name, Van Helsing, actually says, let's put all of our documents together because, you know, if we share information, we'll have a better chance of beating this thing. And so then they compile them all, and it's like, oh my god, that's the book. The book is the thing they've compiled. Like, they've just put all their documents together. So the book almost becomes part of the book. Like, the book is in the book, if that makes sense. And I love that. I thought that was such a clever idea. And it really, like, added to the, what's it called, like verisimilitude, or like it really just made it like come to life. I thought it makes the reader a detective, you know, like you have to go through each document and like, you know, even though the story isn't like, it's not like a detective story, but like just that feeling that you're going through documents was like makes the scary stuff really scary. For me, the number one scene though is the captain's logs on the boat. Like that whole thing of being on the boat and like one by one the crew members are disappearing in the night, and then like there's something on the boat. It's basically Alien, right? But just like on a ship. Anyway, that left a really deep imprint on my imagination. Also, I love the idea of Dracula like as an immigrant in a coffin going over the border from Europe into England. Like, it feels like it has certain resonances that are still relevant today. The next one is also Gothic and also written by a friend of Bram Stoker's, and that is The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. It's interesting that like all of these books are set in England, or at least partially set in England, rather than Ireland. And the writers themselves all lived in England. And, you know, that's just like kind of, I guess, what you did in those days. You had to go over to England if you wanted to be successful because of, you know, colonialism and all that jazz. So like my dad told me the ghost story version of The Picture of Dorian Gray when I was a kid. And I think he like just adapted that from the movie, which was like, I guess, popular when he was a kid. So the version that I had was basically just the beginning and the end in my imagination for a lot of my time growing up. But it was a great story. I mean, just the beginning and the end are a great, like, kind of chilling, gothic, thrillery kind of thing, right? with some ideas about morality and stuff. You know, the classic story of a guy who has this painting in the attic and that ages while he stays young, and also it like absorbs his evil deeds. So he does evil things, and as he does evil things, the painting starts to look more evil. Both his age and his, I mean, like, it's kind of not aged well, this story. Not aged well. This idea of morality linked to how you look. It's like the prettier you are, the more morally good you are. And if you're an ugly person, you're gross, like that painting in the attic. But it's still a really compelling story that like the monstrous side of him is represented visually, and he keeps that hidden away in his attic, and has to, you know, like not let anyone see it. So just the idea of keeping the dark part of yourself in a painting in an attic is just a great, like, kind of creepy story. But Oscar Wilde goes way more. He does his whole thing of, what's it called? Epigrams and like aestheticisms and witticisms and just like what are they called? Aphorisms, all the isms. But like he's so amazing at like the way he can string together some, like, what are they called? I can't really talk. These like short pithy things that say a lot, and they're all like kind of about this art for art's sake movement, which was in France and which Wilde wanted to kind of make big in England, I guess. And yeah, it's just like kind of celebrating sensuality without purpose or without meaning and without morality. You know, like morality was a big important thing in art. Like, is this art moral and so on? And so like his whole thing of like divorcing art from morality as part of what he was doing as a writer, and also like kind of the theme of the novel is really interesting, and like really like it's really intertwined, you know, like his aesthetic statement that he puts at the beginning, as well as the story of Dorian, who is like kind of corrupted by a mentor, Lord Henry, who fills his mind with these sort of like ideas about art and life, and basically that you should just live without consequences, and that, you know, your life is a work of art and you should live as a work of art, and art should be like first and foremost sensuous, I guess. Basically, I think like Wilde uses the idea of, you know, appreciating life and art with your senses and with your body, and he explores that and like pushes it to extremes, and just wants to see how that fits in with ideas about being good or being bad, you know, like how, you know, like appreciating art for art's sake connects to, you know, like the choices we make in life. There's a famous quote by Oscar Wilde that he wrote in a letter to a friend or something, where he's like, everyone thinks I'm Lord Henry. Everyone sees me as Lord Henry, and he's the, you know, the corrupter, the one who's always like spouting his witticisms. And he says, and I wish that I was actually Dorian, you know, and Dorian's like the young, beautiful one who can get away with anything and has the secret things all like kept away in the attic. But then but then Wilde says like, alas, I'm Basil. And Basil is the painter, the tortured gay painter who's just like sadly paints the thing and sees everything spiral out of control. And like I just find it a really touching quote. I love the scary story that my dad told me as a kid, but it did not prepare me at all for the novel when I read it. That novel, man, that completely just boom. It completely like rewired my brain, to be honest. So I read this book at the age when like people are like sponges, you know, like those teenage years where you're hungry for ideas, you're hungry for growth and development. And this book, because of the timing, you know, like in my life when it came to me, then like it had such a profound effect on me. And I really like kind of understood reading and what reading could do and be really differently after I read this one. And then finally, a slightly more modern one, The Silver Chair by C.S. Lewis. Now, when I did a quick internet search to see like favorite Irish authors that like I might have forgotten or something, and I was surprised that C.S. Lewis is Irish, because like I didn't know he was Irish. I just presumed he was English. He's actually Northern Irish, so he is actually British as well as Irish, and it's one of those like in-betweeny kind of countries, right? At least when he was living in the UK, he seems to have identified most as being Irish, which makes sense, you know, because when you leave a country and you get to another one and you're treated like you're another, you know, like from how you speak and so on, then you tend to identify with that group of otherness, right? Rather than try and, you know, like say, no, I'm British. It would make sense that he would like seek out Irish friends and embrace that part of his identity. Now, the Silver Chair is the one which isn't really a horror novel. It's part of the Narnia series, but it's definitely different from the rest of the Narnia series, right? This is no Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe. This is a gloomy, dark fantasy novel. I kind of have the feeling that this book is not really as well loved amongst Narnia fans as some of the other books. Although I did recently see a video which, you know, sings its praises, and I was really happy. That was the first one I've ever seen, so I'll link that down below. But The Silver Chair, right, it's my favorite because it's like a gritty reboot. It's like C.S. Lewis was doing gritty reboots before they were popular. And I would understand why it's not well loved by Narnia fans, because it's really different from the rest of the series, in my opinion. First of all, we have the main characters. There's Jill, who is a girl and assertive and tomboyish, and like, that's not something we've really seen so much in the series before. She was like a breath of fresh air for the series when I was reading it. And then there's Eustace, who was in the Voyage of the Dawn Treader, and he is like kind of like, in that one he was spoiled, and then he gets turned into a dragon, and then he turns good. He's like a jerk character who becomes reformed. Reformed heroes are always way more interesting than just heroes, right? That's why, like in The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe, Edmund, who is like the Judas, the traitor, who eats the Turkish delights and, you know, sides with the White Witch, is way more interesting than Peter, who is just like the good hero guy. You know, like Edmund over Peter any day of the week, right? The Silver Chair is that the son of Caspian, Rillian, has vanished, has disappeared, and they have to, and so these two children are spirited away from our world into the world of Narnia to try and find Rillian. First of all, they go through marshes, and they meet Puddleglum, who is like the best character in all of Narnia, next to Reepicheep the Mouse. He's also really great. But Puddleglum is like the Eeyore of fantasy books. Like, he is just so morose and so pessimistic all the time, and incredibly lovable, and just like, despite the fact that he's so pessimistic about every situation, you know, he just continues on the journey with them, and he's the best character. So I love me some Puddleglum. Even his name, Puddleglum, it just tells you everything you need to know about him. And he's a marshwiggle, by the way. That's his species. He's Puddleglum the marshwiggle. So Puddleglum the marshwiggle, who is actually an Eeyore, and Jill and Eustace travel north, and they go through these marshes and then these ruins, and then they go, oh yeah, in the ruins there's these giants, and they eat animals. And in Narnia, like, there's animals that can talk, right? I don't know if there's both, or is it only animals that can talk? Oh yeah, in Narnia, like, there's animals that can talk and animals that don't talk, and they're eating animals. And then there's like a kind of twist thing where they find out that, like, the animals they're eating are talking animals, and the way that Puddleglum and Jill and Eustace all react to this are really different, because one is a Narnian, one has spent time in Narnia, and one is a human. So for the human, it's just like, it's just an animal. But then, like, for the Narnian, it's like, oh my god, it's like cannibalism, basically. He's eating a person, and then Eustace is like somewhere in the middle. So reading their reactions, and also like going into these themes of cannibalism, you know, in a kid's fantasy novel, was like really like heavy stuff. But I loved it. And then after that, they go underground. And if I remember rightly, it's been, you know, many years, but if I remember rightly, they are underground for a large section of this novel. So it's just such a dark and oppressive and like gloomy journey to find the prince and the silver chair. So it's like, anyway, definitely the darkest of the Narnia books, and my favorite. Although I also love The Voyage of the Dawn Treader with Eustace. I guess I just like Eustace. So apologies to Samuel Beckett and Seamus Heaney and Jonathan Swift and all those Irish people who are great and wonderful writers. But C.S. Lewis beat you to the mark. But yeah, these were the books that just had the strongest impression on me, and I love them. They're my top 3 Irish books. So, happy Halloween. Thank you for watching and listening, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye. Oh, hang on, I'll do it again. Do the thing again. Happy Halloween! Oh, shit.